Hi there, this is Jeanette Comerford, and this is day 6 and the final day of my Halloween series for 2016. For this final video, I wanted to create an art journal page. I used a digital image from Tilly Inks, which I colored in Copic markers, and then for the background, I used my Kuretake Gansei Tambi watercolor palette. So I'm going to take you through all the coloration. It's quite a long video. Feel free to skip through the Copic coloration if you wish. If you just want to see the watercoloring, it's sort of, I would say, midway through the video. So my image was printed on Neenah cardstock, and then I am just doing the skin tones here. These are my regular go-to skin tone colors that I use. They were listed on the screen a little while ago, and I'm just blending everything out. That area of her nose, I want it to be the lightest, so it's the very last thing that I color. Just blending everything out now. I'm going to add a little bit of R20 for the cheeks, and then I'm doing the eyes with some green toned markers. For her headdress, I wanted it to be black. This image really reminds me of Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, so I kind of wanted this to be black. And I'm just using cool tones of grays and just laying them down and blending them out. You can see this is going pretty fast. This is actually sped up quite a bit, so I don't color this fast for sure. But if I showed you this video in real time, it would be too long. So I go back and forth to make sure I have the right amount of depth where I have the most shadows, and then I just blend everything out with my lighter markers. I'm going to be doing her cape with the same colors for the inside anyhow. I had thought maybe I would do the outside of her cape a different color. In the end, you're going to see that I did it in the grays as well. Then I'm going to move on to the dress. So I'm using all violet tones, adding this lightest marker to the areas where I want all my shadows, all my folds. You can see I'm adding folds in. And it's easier to do this with your lighter marker, because if you lay in a fold somewhere where you don't want it, it's pretty easy to color over that. Now I'm going in with the next darker color. And this dress took a long time, but if you're patient and just blend all your colors out, it will end up looking beautiful. I know at some points when I was coloring this, I didn't think it was going to work. But if you just persevere, it usually ends up working. So I'm just working on the bodice area right now and the arms, getting those all shaded, blending out with my lighter colors here, and then using my lighter marker for the final blend. And you can see I just worked at it until it was exactly how I wanted it. Now I'm going to go over those fold lines again and just using subsequently darker and darker colors, but not going out of sort of the bounds of where I've laid down the color. When I blend out, that's when I widen up my coloring area. So you can see I lay down the darker color, and then I blend out with the second lightest color. So I just move up and move back down. And like I said, it never looks great when you're at this point. So I'm just sort of coloring in now with the second darkest color, smoothing out everything. I'm going to use the next lighter color, and again smoothing everything out. You can see those areas where I have left white, they're getting smaller and smaller until I finally fill them in with my lightest marker. And then I'm going to go back in with my darker markers again. You're going to see at this point now I'm sort of using my marker on the fold lines. You're going to see I'm going to switch to a side-to-side motion, and this gives the pleats a more natural look. So I'll be moving to that in a minute. Still working on the blending. So here you see I'm starting to work side to side, bringing that color out a little bit more each time I do it, and then blending with my lighter colors. So I'm going to do it again because I felt it was still too light in some areas, so I'm going side to side with the darker markers and then blending out with the lighter ones, until finally I was happy with how that all looked. I'm going to do the rest of the cape sort of in the same way, using those gray toned markers. Just working from light to dark and dark to light. Once that was all done, I did go ahead and add some brown to her staff here. Colored in the bird with the same gray markers. You can see the smaller areas take a lot less time to do. And this image is printed up very, very large. So if you print it up smaller, it won't take as much time as it took me. So then I just took a white gel pen, added some highlights to her eyes, to the bird as well, and I took a silver Wink of Stella for her belt. So now I have my piece of watercolor paper cut to 6x8. I drew in some hills there. You see the hills I drew in with the pencil. I took some masking paper and I cut out a circle, quite a large circle. That's going to be the moon. I'm going to trace around the circle now. And I'm going to color in the moon first, and then I will mask it. So I have my palette here. I'm using the yellow and the sort of shimmery gray color, so I'm just tracing around the outline of my moon and then just adding water and blending the color out. So off to the side I have a little cup of water and I have a paper towel, and I just dry off my paintbrush as I need, or rinse it out as I need. You can see now I'm adding this sort of silver gray color, and that's going to give some contrast and dimension to the moon. Then I'm going to move on to the hills, just using one color. I'm going to trace the bottom here of the hill and then work upwards, just blending with some water, rinsing my paintbrush out and drying it, and then blending a little bit more to get that gradiated effect. Go move to the next one. Doing the same thing, and I'm by no means an expert at this. I'm just sort of playing. I really love playing with watercolors, and especially since I knew a lot of this was going to be covered up, I'm going to be stamping some trees onto this. I wasn't too worried about how it was going to look. I knew quite a bit of it was going to be covered up. I just wanted to blend so that there was no sort of lined areas anywhere. So I'm just going to turn the paper over and do the bottom section. And once that was all dry, I erased that line that I had made. Then I'm going to put the mask over it. And I did sort of blast this with my heat gun to make sure it was totally dry. I'm going to take a bone folder and just press that down so that the edges are really adhered. And then I'm going to choose some light purples and some blues and some dark purples for the sky. I added a little bit of water so that my paint would move more easily. And I'm just extending that light blue up. And again, this took me quite a bit of time. It's not something you can do in a rush, but I find it really therapeutic and so much fun. You're never sure how it's going to turn out. I'm being a little bit careful about how much water is going near the moon. I really don't want it to seep too much into the moon. I'm going around the edges now. Then I'm going to add some dark purple because right now the sky I felt looked like daytime, and I really want the sky to look like it's night. So this gorgeous purple color, and I'm going to sort of tap it down and it moves with the water. So again, I'm just working back and forth, adding color and blending it out with some more water. And I ended up having to darken it up quite a bit. It just looked too much like day to me. Trying to make sure I don't have any harsh lines. And just making sure everything sort of blends out nicely. So then I blasted it again with my heat tool, and when I lifted up my mask there was a little bit of seepage, but not very much, and I was able just to get rid of that with a wet paintbrush. So again, when I looked at it, it still wasn't dark enough for me, so I added more of the purple, tried to bring it down a little bit more. And like I said, I'm not an expert. There's probably a quicker way to do this, but this is what I was doing. I was playing. Just blend out those water lines again. A little bit off camera here, but I was just doing the same thing. I was just blending out all those watermarks. And I think in hindsight, it probably would have been better if I had been patient enough to let the paper dry in between naturally, but I wasn't patient. Once it actually was all dry, I did mask off the hills a little bit, and I have this gorgeous, I guess it's evergreen stamp from, I think it's Impression Obsession. It'll be linked below the video. And I'm using some gray Hero Art ink. And I'm using my Misty because I knew I was going to have to stamp it quite a few times because the watercolor paper I used was quite rough. I knew it would take quite a few times to really get a nice impression. And you can see I'm pressing quite hard here. And that sort of covers up any of my mistakes with my watercoloring and sort of makes a nice scene. I'm going to adhere down my image now using a little bit of tape runner tape here. I'm just going to position her properly, exactly where I want her to be. Press down. I die cut a little bat. This was using a Whimsy die. I'm not sure if it's available anymore, but if it is, I will link it. And I used some Zig glue to adhere that, and if there was any tiny little bits that needed to be adhered, I used the Zig glue for that. Put my block on it to dry, and my page is done. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. A full link of supplies or a full list of supplies and links can be found below this video on YouTube or my blog. Thanks for watching.